choline is super, super important for pregnancy and breastfeeding, but in general, it's really important for both men and women for many, many reasons. And recently I was sharing just with Becca and the team, like obviously from the gut health and hormone side, I have used choline a lot in my protocols, mainly for bile support and liver and digestion. But as you're doing more research about, some of these nutrients we already know from nature are really important, you'll learn a lot more. And there's some really just kind of like fun clinical pearls and eye openers. So one of them, especially for menopausal women, is that, when you have low estrogen helps break down choline. So you even need more choline. I actually just posted about it today, just some of the stats. But it's really, really important for brain health and memory. And so my reel was basically like, do you feel stupid? Like, do you feel like you can't, remember things? You walk into a room, you don't know why you're there. And the stats are for people who have, again, low hormones here. When you're deprived of dietary choline, 77% of men and 80% of postmenopausal women developed fatty liver or muscle damage, whereas only 44% of premenopausal women developed such signs of organ dysfunction. So it's a lot to do with the liver, but also, what I would say here from the low estrogen standpoint is you don't even have to be postmenopausal. We see low estrogen all the time.
I have low estrogen.
Yeah. So, it's one of those things like, just because, like, for me, I'm like, I'm taking this as a preventative either way, and I'm giving it to my husband. Like, all of us are taking it because if you think about like all of the different functions that we're going to talk about, it would just kind of be silly not to take it as a preventative, kind of like fish oil, right? Yep. So let's talk about some of the signs and symptoms of deficiency.
Yes. So a lot of them are cognitive. So when you are dealing with low choline, we will see fatigue or low energy, memory loss, cognitive decline, learning difficulties or learning disorders, nerve damage, mood changes and disorders, muscle aches and pains, poor bile flow, gallstones, and fatty liver disease. Those are kind of the big ones that if you have all of those, maybe choline's in your future. So because, and this will help us understand, the functions of choline play a very large role in cell health. Mm-hmm. And when we have cell health issues, you typically have energy, fatigue, memory, cognitive function issues. So when it comes to the things that choline does in the body, one, cell structure. So choline is necessary to create the fats that help support the structure of your cell membrane. So our cell membrane is lipid. It is a lipid membrane. And it needs to be lipid because it's kind of, think like a balloon that you can like push into that things can get in and out of versus a rock. When the cell membrane becomes very rigid and unhealthy, typically from inflammation, underlying bacterial or viral infections, poor diet and lifestyle, it's very hard for cells to be able to get the nutrients they need because that lipid layer becomes unhealthy. Mm-hmm. And choline is extremely important for the health of that lipid layer. So the cellular structure in and of itself, choline helps with. Cellular messaging. So choline is necessary to help make the compounds that work as the messengers for cells, because all of our cells talk to each other.
They communicate.
They are like little
sometimes
humans.
Ineffectively, kind of like humans.
Yes, exactly.
Maybe we communicate ineffectively because we have choline deficiency.
Big dumb humans.
No, and I think it's important too. So like just thinking about this from a genetic standpoint, like we've talked about methylation and we've talked about the MTHFR gene and all of that stuff related to folate and B12, which plays a big role also in terms of cellular inflammation and how these processes function in the body. So if we can't get toxins out of the cell and hormones into the cell or nutrients into the cell, we're not, doing too good. And there is something called the choline shortcut. So if your body doesn't have enough folate or B12 methylcobalamin, the choline can provide methylation support. And so a lot of people get deficient in this because not just because of choline, but because their methylation pathways are dirtied up. Or maybe, again, you have the MTHFR gene mutation. And the reason why this happens is because there's backup mechanisms in the body, which is good. We're thankful for that, right? And this is can be done short term to support the liver and the kidneys. But the methylation cycle is needed to support all of your organs, which is why a lot of this is cognitive. But it goes beyond the brain too, like uterus, your testicles, your skin, intestines, gut health, all of those things. So that's really, really important when we think about, all of the roles that choline plays, and even plays as kind of like that backup player. In terms of what I mentioned before with constipation and bioflow, another big part of choline is to really help metabolize fats and transport fats. So there's actually a study in 2003 from the Journal of Biology Chemistry showing that choline helps remove cholesterol from your liver. It removes fat from your liver, so it aids in reducing inflammation of the liver, build up of fat in the liver, and that could lead to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is the most common liver disease. So again, something that is really important, especially if you're not eating a good quality diet, a lot of seed oils, alcohol, things like that. And then, as I mentioned before, with the B12s and the folate, choline is also necessary for DNA synthesis. So this is something that we think about when we're looking at genetics. And this is, again, where we like, to look at genetics testing for individuals to really know specifically, like, hey, what level do you need? Should you be supplementing with this? And then we think about the nervous system. So choline is great to make acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter. So this is really important, again, for memory and brain health, heart function and cardiovascular health, your muscle movement and contraction, so the communication from your brain to your muscles to contract when they should and release when they shouldn't. And then we also, think about just overall mental health, because if we're looking at neurotransmitters, we're always thinking about mental health, depression, and anxiety.
Yep. So some people that are at a slightly higher risk for choline deficiency, to kind of understand: endurance athletes, people that participate in long endurance sports, marathons, Ironmans, half marathons, things like that. You will utilize or need higher amounts of it for obviously restructuring and repair and recovery. Excessive alcohol intake, shocker. Postmenopausal women and women with low estrogen levels, like Liz was talking about, and then pregnant women, because it plays such a large role in that development of the fetus. So big benefits we already talked through, obviously the DNA and cell structure, the nervous system, the brain health and the memory health, and the heart health, homocysteine. So we test homocysteine with all of our clients. Homocysteine is a type of inflammation that specifically kind of happens around the heart. And there is a large genetic factor with homocysteine levels being high. Methylation plays a really large role in it, essentially, but choline is extremely important for helping the conversion of homocysteine. So when we see high homocysteine levels, we typically put in like a phosphatidylcholine, or we'll put in a homocysteine nutrient support, but it's an amino acid that you can get from meat, protein sources. High levels are associated essentially with heart disease and blood vessel diseases. And like I mentioned, it's a inflammation of the heart is kind of what we see, and homocysteine levels over like a 7.5 are where you kind of start to see there is some inflammation building up. And so choline deficiency is linked to increased homocysteine levels as well. So we definitely want to make sure that we don't allow that, because homocysteine injures the arterial wall and fatty substances accumulate. We know, heart disease, heart attacks, things like that. So it essentially just drives inflammation to that heart area. So we definitely want to make sure that we are supporting, making sure we don't have elevated homocysteine levels, and that we're utilizing what we can. And choline is an amazing thing that you can utilize. So
yeah, and I think we're on that topic. I think it's important. We've talked about this before in terms of cholesterol. So people are like, well, should I avoid whole eggs? And whole eggs are actually one of the richest foods with choline. And there's been research that has shown this to debunk the fact that you should avoid your red meat and your eggs with the yolks because of, cholesterol levels. So choline in eggs can support healthy cholesterol levels. So I wouldn't be avoiding your red meat or your whole eggs. Plus they're delicious. I don't know anybody who likes just egg whites, like watery egg
I posted
whites.
about this, and the way to make egg whites is to bake them. Like I have to do an egg white omelet, because if I try to scramble egg whites, it just gets so watery. And I've been doing some egg whites lately because of, I'm
You're
in the bodybuilder world, and I'm in the cut phase right now, and it's just, it's what they do. And I get 2 eggs on my non-training days, so I get some good saturated fats there. But when it comes to the amount of choline that you need, so the RDA is different than I think what in general people need, to be honest. I think that the RDA, so little fun fact about the RDA. RDA is basically to avoid malnutrition. That's what the RDA is based off of.
And I love that it's called recommended daily allowance. Well, like, why don't you say something along the lines of like minimum daily intake?
Yes.
Because that's really what it is, to avoid malnutrition, right? Or malnourishment. So a recommended daily allowance should be much higher than that. Like for me, in most of my protocols, we're looking at 1 gram to 1.5 grams, like 1,000 milligrams to 1,500 milligrams, typically, because upper limit is like 3.5 grams.
Yes. So the recommended daily allowance is 550 or so milligrams. And we recommend 500 to 1,000 plus, and there really are no known dangers. And that's what I love about supplements like this. There's no known dangers of going up to, like Liz was saying, 3.5 grams a day, 3,500 milligrams a day. And same thing, like similar with magnesium. There's really not a ton, unless you're on like a blood thinner. Magnesium can thin blood to an extent. So like there are certain supports that are just so beneficial with so few downsides that we love them. And it is a little challenging to get enough from your daily intake. So some big food sources: beef liver, chicken liver, not either things that many people are eating, fresh cod, salmon, chickpeas, navy beans, split peas, eggs, like Liz was saying. One large egg has about 150 milligrams. So you would need like 3 large eggs and a bunch of broccoli and chicken breast and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts. But those will get less and less in terms of their amount. Like you would have to eat 5 cups of broccoli, right? And 3 eggs. And so it's just, you start getting into then also how much are you actually absorbing? Because a lot of us don't actually absorb everything that we consume. You'll absorb some of it, but not every single thing. And so we do think that it is a very affordable supplement. It is a very beneficial and very low risk in terms of supporting with choline. And we want to let people know.
Yeah.
And the last piece that I think was really important to talk about is that betaine choline relationship.
Yeah. So gut health. And this is something that, we have talked about stomach acid on here, ad nauseum, super, super important. I can't tell you the amount of calls I've had, even just this year, and this is only May, of people who have done protocols with other practitioners and are back to square one, still struggling, and they've never done a stomach acid tolerance test. And it's like, you've got to be getting some support in, especially if you've got infections or, you are somebody who's chronically stressed. And so when we look at gut health and just choline in general, one of the qualities of choline is to, really turn and transform into betaine. So betaine HCl is what we use when there is low stomach acid, but it can also reduce the risk of choline deficiency. Why? It helps you absorb the nutrients. It helps you better get all of the vitamins and minerals that you are ingesting, but maybe not digesting. That's what I was trying to say. And one of the major roles of choline, as we have talked about, is to be a methyl donor, right? To support that methylation process in the body for detoxification. And a prerequisite for this is that, choline can convert into betaine. And so this means that choline is not a direct methyl donor, but when it is converted into betaine, it is a direct methyl donor. So this is, again, where we kind of look at different genetic mutations like the PEMT and other liver things as well beyond just the methylation genes, because, again, as we've talked about, this can help support liver health and reduce the risk of fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver, and so forth. And so one of the things that we would also think about here is SIBO. And I know that a lot of people have reached out recently about SIBO, which impacts your small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And so this means that while SIBO, may affect your levels, it can be, likely less to affect betaine. So we need basically to understand this a little bit more in the relationship of stomach acid and its role in terms of preventing small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And so again, this is just something where I would say it's a very safe product. I use it, and I would be using it if I were you, just to reduce the chances, right, of being deficient in choline, of, developing Alzheimer's. Like when we think about that homocysteine marker, when we look at that on blood work, anything above a 7 has been shown in research to be linked to dementia, Alzheimer's, and other neurological disorders. So you can easily prevent that. It's kind of like, I view this almost as a fish oil, basically, right? So we know fish oil is great for a lot of different things in the body, choline as well.
Yep.
So as we mentioned, just kind of like a wrap up here, choline is something that we think everyone should be taking. And, if you are curious on where to find, the supplemental forms, you can always go to the link in the show notes. And there you will see our full script account, and you can go on and you can search. I love Body Bio. They have a combination, different phospholipids, or you can just do like straight up choline from Standard Process, Biotics Research. There's a bunch of them in there. I think as long as it's a good quality brand, you really can't go wrong. Just make sure that you're also checking. You ideally want it to have some betaine HCl in there for absorption, if you can find it with it. I haven't seen many. They're more expensive. So honestly, for me, I have separate supplements for that, but that is a nice thing to have if you can find a product that has that in there as well.
Yep. So let us know if you have any questions. And if you ever have questions you'd like us to answer, supplements you'd like us to cover, any topics, please submit them to the podcast, fitmomlife.com/ask, and we would be happy to answer your questions. And with that, we will talk to you